Hello and welcome to the Retro Hour podcast, episode number 93, your weekly dose of retro gaming and technology news with me, Dan Wood.
And me, Ravi Abbott.
Hopefully not sounding too husky after a busy couple of weeks.
Oh, yes. Now we can relax, Dan. all the kind of events are over and stuff. It's good.
Play Expo last weekend. What a weekend we had. And I think, fingers crossed, we did manage to record the interviews that we did on stage this time.
Yeah, no, I didn't fall off, so that was good.
So we're going to bring you those amazing panels that we did in coming weeks on the show when we get the audio taken off and edited. If you did come along and say hi to us as well, we met up with so many people. It was such an incredible weekend. So thank you so much for being there. And Roll on Play Blackpool, it's coming up in February.
Oh, totally. And the guest we've got today, oh my God, guys, Bob Wakelin. We've always wanted to have this guest on, haven't we?
Well, we first met Bob actually at Play, didn't we? About 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, because he's at these events quite a lot and he has kind of a stand. Yeah. And, you know, he did all the video game art, the original stuff for Ocean. You know, those like kind of muscly guys and sexy ladies that you'd have on the front of the games. Like,
it was very much inspired by like comic books and stuff, his early stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, or kind of Rambo-ish, you know,
Action Man figures and that. Then obviously though, I mean, he did stuff like, you know, Parasol Stars and Rainbow Islands and the kind of cartoon cutesy kind of games as well later on. So
yeah, totally. And we're talking to Bob about what it was like to kind of be an artist, but not a video game artist, a video game cover artist.
Yeah, because I mean, you think back then, and we do kind of touch on this in the interview, because graphics, especially in like the 8-bit days when he started on the C64, it was really, I mean, the front cover of the game is what would sell you in the shop. I remember being a kid and looking up at the shelf full of like, you know, cassette tapes, and even when you went in to get Amiga games and like Electronics Boutique and all that later on, it would always be the covers that would draw you in first.
Oh, yeah, totally. You know, even at the back, you'd have a blurb and a description, but that would always be just some rubbish. Like, the cover would kind of get your mind going and think, right, let's jump into this. And, you know, it would set up that kind of fantasy world.
Well, I remember, you know, in the 8-bit days, it was kind of like, because you'd look at the back and the screenshots would always be from like the 16-bit platforms.
Well, they'd be from wrong platforms, yeah. Yeah, totally. And you'd be like, take it home. And you're like, where have all the details gone?
Little asterisks, it was always there, it said at the bottom,
not actual representations of the product.
Screenshots maybe from a different platform, it would always say. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, those amazing covers. And I mean, Ocean were like the kings at that, weren't they? And Bob was really their main artist.
Totally, yeah. And by the sounds of it, they kept him, you know, kind of protected away from the other people.
So he's got some great stories to tell. What a guy. Bob Wakelin, the Ocean software legend, is our special guest on this week's episode of the Retro Hour podcast. He'll be coming up in around 20 minutes from now. Now, of course, we do the show week in, week out. We may be the only weekly British retro gaming podcast.
Yeah, you've added British now, because we also realised after New Game Plus, we also realised that there's a podcast that I donate to.
Ravi.
Which is so bad, called Amigos Podcast. How did I not notice they were weekly? I mean,
you watch like every episode as well?
Every episode, every Let's Play, yeah.
They are top guys as well. So, I mean, if you are into the Amiga and you haven't checked them out, they put a lot of effort into their videos as well.
Well, they've got to the point now, through donations, probably some of mine, that they've been able to build a studio, which is fantastic. And the quality of it has just gone through the roof. And check it out.
Well deserved. I mean, if you haven't seen that, we'll put a link in this week's show notes as well. But, you know, as far as we know, we could possibly be the only weekly British.
This is going to get worse, isn't it? The only British one based in the Midlands.
Yeah, recorded in this
releases on Friday. Yeah.
But we couldn't do the show week in, week out without your very generous support now. If you may be new to the show and you think, actually, this is really cool, I'd like you guys to keep doing this. Or maybe you're a long-term listener. Maybe you've listened since episode 1. The only way we can keep doing the Retro Hour podcast every week is thanks to your very generous donations. Now, we do have, and this is completely optional, it's just a tip jar. Anything we get in there all goes back into the running of this show. And you'll find a PayPal link, a Bitcoin donation button as well on the front page of our website, theretrohour.com. And this week, making their place in the Retro Hour Hall of Fame, thank you, Daniel Waddington,
Adrian Nelson,
Alicia Cuff,
Gareth Murphin,
who all made donations. And you can do the same by nipping onto our website, theretrohour.com. Of course, my wedding was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
You were hanging out with a few, like, you know, kind of retro gaming friends there.
I think this is the only wedding that I went to where there was the ex-head of Commodore.
Yeah.
And they were also filming a Commodore documentary. That's not going to happen at any other wedding.
Well, the Amiga kind of saved my day a bit as well, because night before, well, it was actually a few days before, my missus got these little, like, table cards, you know, where you put people's names on them.
Yeah.
And she come home with a pack, about 4 or 5 packs of them. She goes, is there any way we can print onto these? And I thought, that's going to be easy. I've got like this, HP scanner printer thing. Thought I can use that, wireless printer. That'll be easy enough to do. It wouldn't take these little cards. No matter what I did, I couldn't resize it. It would just come through and think there's no paper in it.
Yeah. It wouldn't feed the cards
the A4, yes. And I tried it on the laser printer here at work, and I thought, what am I going to do? And all the guides I looked at online, it was always like, you can make these cards on it, but on a sheet of A4, then cut them up afterwards.
Yeah.
No way to put these pre-made cards in. Then I remembered, I thought, when my parents moved house recently, I took all my crap out the attic, including an old Canon Bubble Jet, I think it's a BJ10SX printer. And I remember as a kid printing out floppy disk labels on that thing. You'd feed the actual little floppy disk labels in on the line feed button, you press that and it'd come through. So I thought, I wonder if I can get some ink for that. Went on eBay, managed to get 6 cartridges for it, like new old stock for like £9. So I just printed them all out on that. And it worked. It worked
Fantastic.
a treat.
Yeah, they look really good when I saw them. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it actually worked. Yeah, on Final Writer 97 on the Amiga. So
well, that's fantastic. And I got you a nice little present.
I've got to say thank you to you. And it was Marcel as well.
Yeah. Marcel and Marvin, they donated. So yeah.
I've got an Amiga 3000 now.
Oh, I can't wait to see the video, Dan.
Oh, it's I've got a 4000 that I got a few years ago, but the 3000 I think is by far my favourite. A lot of people say it's the best Amiga, don't they?
Yeah, it's a really sexy machine, and it's kind of scuzzy, but also it doesn't need a scan doubler, so you could just plug it straight into a monitor.
Yeah.
Boom.
Well, I watch Steve Jones on YouTube.
Yeah.
He's done a few videos about the 3000. Ever since I saw that, I really want one. So, best wedding present ever. Obviously, it was there just for me, not Samantha.
Well,
you got a sewing machine there.
Yeah, I got an old school sewing machine. Yeah, I like retro gifts, you see. There you go.
But yeah, what a wedding we had as well. I've got to say thank you so much, because you put a picture up, didn't you, on the Reggie page. I couldn't go through and thank everybody because there's so many of them, but
really nice comments, guys. Thank you so much. I was expecting a lot more abuse than that.
There was a few like, that's it, he's going to have to sell all his computer and console collection now.
Amigas in the bins.
But yeah, really appreciate all your best wishes, guys. It means the world to us. Thank you so much. Right then, into this week's news stories. Now, obviously, one of our favourite guests that we've had on the show. We've had loads of brilliant guests, but we managed to score the legend that is Rob Hubbard on the show a few months ago.
I'd say he's the absolute best at kind of this old C64 music. He's just fantastic. And he's doing a Kickstarter now. This has been needed for ages. We've had stuff from Alistair Brimble. We've had stuff from Chris Hulsbeck. Now we're getting Rob Hubbard, and this is Project Hubbard. Now,
King Rob is going to be putting out not only a hardback book, I guess talking about his times working on, SID tracks and video games, and he's also back in the studio with new SID projects, a Commodore 64 cart, and maybe the London Symphony Orchestra.
Well, Rob mentioned that he had a lot of unreleased and rare material.
Yeah.
He's got a double album worth. So that's going to be released with this. This is for the basic backers. But also, what he's going to be doing is he's going to be creating a studio album. So this is Hubbard 80. This isn't going to be done on 164 in a studio. Mm-hmm. This is going to be done with all the original synthesizers, the Moogs and everything, but they're going to be putting the sequences through of the original kind of C64 tunes and making it a real studio experience. There's a little sample, isn't there, Dan?
Well, there's a little message I've seen from Rob himself on the Kickstarter page. So let's have a little listen.
Hi, this is Rob speaking. Finally glad to see that this project is underway and that people have shown a lot of interest in this. I'm extremely honoured and flattered that people seem to remember the work that I did back in the 80s, and some people remember the stuff I did in the 90s. It's a great honour that people have showed interest and want to pledge their cash into this.
See, I just think, anyone who grew up playing C64 music, there's a little ticker underneath that mentions his games, International Karate, Knuckle Busters. These games that everyone played, Monty on the Run, the Monty series.
Well, that's it. It's like, he's not remixing me. He's kind of making a beautiful studio album. And it's like, you're going to get higher quality versions of this. But also, the stretch goal is an 8-bit symphony, which is a full concert, which will involve the London Symphony Orchestra doing Rob Hubbard tunes. That's just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to reach it. I think Rob's got enough kind of support out there to get there.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the time we're recording this show, I mean, it's almost there anyway, and it's still got a couple of weeks left. It's going to finish on a Sunday, November the 5th. So I don't think there's no chance this is not going to make
I'm
it.
definitely backing it. I want to get Rob's tunes on vinyl.
Yeah.
That's my aim. Yeah.
Again, it's like the fact is, what I love about this is you're also going to get 10 new Rob Hubbard Sid tracks. It's like,
it's fantastic.
I imagine, all the songs that we really love of his were kind of like 20, 30 years ago. So I imagine with his kind of more experience he's got over time, these are probably going to be some of his best works ever.
Yeah, or they might be really cool classic ones that are from 10 years ago that he didn't even release and just puts them out, and they could be mind-blowing. You never know.
And I think it's awesome that Rob's actually understands the demand now. And he's
I
a very
think
modest guy, isn't he?
He's very humble, and he's kind of always amazed that people are interested in his stuff still.
Yeah.
But, he's such a pioneer in this industry. It's amazing.
And like you said, he's going to essentially recreate a 1979 studio to kind of work the Sid chip in there and push that to its limits and work around it as well, I guess. So
Well, he's going to put all the stuff through the original old school synths as well. So
there's a clip of that if you want to hear it.
Yeah,
What it sounds
go for
like
it,
going
yeah.
through it all. Okay, here you go.
sounds like Jean-Michel Jarre, doesn't it?
Very warm.
Yeah.
He was quite influenced by him, though, wasn't he?
Yeah,
I remember him saying,
definitely.
So this is awesome. Again, it's like new Rob Hubbard music. Come on, you've got to support this legend.
God.
So if you want to back this Kickstarter, and we implore everybody to do so, we'll put that in our show notes this week at theretrohour.com, and hopefully they're going to get that delivered in just over a year, apparently, I reckon, by April 2019, so a year and a bit. So imagine getting that concert.
Oh, my God. Mind-blowing.
Now, talking about the arcades back in the day, were there any arcade machines that you always made a beeline for at the seaside, or...?
It sounds a bit late, but Crazy Taxi was one, and Time Crisis 2. And I remember my girlfriend, ex, used to get really annoyed with me because I'd put 50p in. Yeah. And I'd say, just one game on Time Crisis, and then complete it. Yeah. And she'd be stood there for hours,
For me, it was always Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat was great, but I never actually saw that many arcade units of it. I'd see it, like, if I visit another arcade, but there wasn't one locally.
Yeah, when I went to, went to Scarborough, I'd see it there, and I think when we were kids, I had an auntie who actually worked at Pontins. She was like a blue coat at Pontins. So I remember we going to stay with her now and then. It was always like, an awful holiday.
Hi.
Exactly like that, yeah. So cheesy. And they'd have like cabarets on and all that. But actually, the Pontins she worked at, it's over in the northwest. I can't remember. It was in had a tower. That's all I remember about it. And I think it actually got turned into a prison in the end, I think. So says it all.
They just put bars on the windows. That was it.
Probably not much difference. But it had a massive arcade in the middle, I remember. And that was like, my brother and I would just stay in there every night, feeding, going back to my mum and dad. And they'd give us like a $5 to get rid of us for a few hours. Then we'd come back, Dad, can we have some more money, please? And we just played Mortal Kombat all night. I think the year we went was when Mortal Kombat 2 first came out. And I've always loved, I love the Mortal Kombat series anyway. I know when I was a kid, it was either between me and my mates, it was always either Street Fighter 2 or Mortal Kombat, which one you like best. I was always firmly on the Mortal Kombat side. And I think number 2 is my favourite in the series. And if I could own probably any arcade machine in my house, it would be a Mortal Kombat 2 cabinet.
Actually, you've just reminded me, track and field.
Oh, way to waggle the thing.
Yeah. I used to play that all the time because I used to go camping when I was a kid, and there was a few campsites. And you just have mad track and field contests with the kids. Yeah.
Is that why you've got such strong wrist muscles?
Yeah, all that training.
That explains it. So, there is actually, someone's modded the Mortal Kombat 2 arcade ROM.
Okay.
And there's been a few of these done. But this is really good. This is called Mortal Kombat 2 Plus. And this guy's released a public beta of it. And essentially what he's done is you can actually download this ROM. You can install it on kind of your own, maybe a MAME cabinet if you've got one at home. And he's unlocked a lot of the stuff that was kind of hidden in this game and added a few new things in there as well, including the setting screens come straight on now. They've got turbo mode in there as well. The ability to reset unlocks random ladders in the game too. Endurance matches, pools of blood. You can enable those, have much more bloody effects than the original. Corrected Goro's lair, a new cheat system, a combo hit counter shown on the screen as well. And also you can, there are some obviously hidden characters in Mortal Kombat that you have to unlock in certain ways. He's working on getting those so they're actually playable characters as well. So
I think it's really cool because, Mortal Kombat, everybody's played ports of it and have kind of, as the systems get lesser and lesser, the ports get worse and worse. So kind of having the original arcade ROM and playing off that. Wow,
Yeah.
it must be a total different experience.
Well, there's Kintaro and Khan. I think they're kind of the hidden characters in the game, and apparently
Okay.
they're working on making those playable as well, from what I see in the
Cool.
comments here too. But again, it's just having, I think, if you've got like a MAME cabinet with this installed and you want to upgrade it to this like kind of enhanced edition, especially when your friends come over, they're going to be like, you know, if they know the game, they'll be like, whoa, what have you done here?
No.
It's always cool to have like mods, I think. So
Oh, totally. And, you know, Mortal Kombat fans are totally passionate, and there's a big crew of them. I've even seen, you know, Mortal Kombat cosplay everywhere. And at Play, we saw some of that.
yeah, I mean, I love Mortal Kombat to this day. In Mortal Kombat X, you know, or XL on the Xbox One, my brother and I play that like pretty much every Friday afternoon. We boot that up and play it on remote online play. Love the Mortal Kombat series, and I think now that we've got married, want to get a bigger place next year, I've got to finally get myself an arcade cabinet.
Oh, totally. If you get one, one thing I've always wanted to do is you could get an Amiga CD32 to jam a board.
Okay, how's that work?
It basically comes out the back of the CD32, goes straight into a Jammer arcade cabinet, and then you can control everything through there and use it as an actual unit. Yeah, make your own custom one.
Well, bring your soldering iron round.
Yeah.
But I do remember I used to watch a series on Revision 3, and these might still be on YouTube. Remember Revision 3 used to do like a System and Dignation, those
Yeah,
shows?
yeah.
And there is actually like a series on System. Patrick Norton hosted it. I think it was probably on about 2007-8 on YouTube, and he shows you pretty much start to finish how to make a MAME cabinet, even how to carve all the wood and everything, and where to get the buttons
Oh, wow.
from and everything. So
That's really fantastic, because I remember Hyperspin
yeah,
was one of the big distributions on there, and it looks massively complex. I've tried to run it on my PC, had no luck, but that was with a wireless Xbox pad.
yeah.
But I can imagine having it all hooked in. You
Yeah.
know, you can go on certain websites and find big builds of Hyperspin, maybe 90 or 100 gig. Download them, and then you've got everything pre-listed and everything.
I think when we were at Play last weekend, it was like, you know, you'd often see tables and they'd have like the arcade buttons and the joysticks. A lot of,
Yeah,
they do
yeah.
sell them at these events. So, you know,
Yeah, all the spare bits are there, aren't they? In these big boxes, yeah.
so I think that's got to be my project for next year, I think. So,
Totally. You've got to get the 3000 souped up first,
I
Dan.
know, too much to do.
Yeah.
Need a bigger house now as well. Now, do you remember when you were a kid, when you first got on the internet? Back in the 90s?
Yep.
How did you talk to your friends back then? Before Facebook Messenger, before the days of Twitter, Facebook?
I
anything like
used ICQ, AIM, and IRC. That was it. I still use IRC, actually. That's probably the only one that I still use.
Yeah. I remember Yahoo Messenger was around. But you mentioned AIM there as well. That was America's America Online Instant Messenger, wasn't it? AOL.
Yeah, and I'd never used AOL service because it seemed really American, and we had like Demon and stuff in the UK, so we didn't really need it. But the Messenger got really popular.
I remember getting, though, the AOL CDs through the door. They would send those.
Yeah, I have hundreds of them.
Yeah, and, you know, just... I
Use them as tea coasters. So
well,
many.
I once in my bedroom actually made blinds out of CDs in my bedroom, so like over my window. They were held together with... Do you know on trainers, when you get the little label on it, was like a little chain that went around?
Yeah.
I put them all together with those because my auntie worked in like a shop where she got the trainer-like little chain things. They were really cool. And when the window was open, they'd all rattle together. But pretty much most of them were AOL CDs and free stuff that came through the door. So, but I did use AIM for a little bit. Now, if you were kind of, you know, on AOL Messenger back in the day, you might remember these sound effects.
You know, that's really weird. The doors.
Remember
Oh,
that
yeah, I
one?
remember that.
That's when someone messaged you, wasn't it? I don't remember what that one was.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But again, it's like those sound effects are so nostalgic. Even though I didn't use it for very long. I think when I first got a Mac, because Apple used to have like a Messenger client that kind of piggybacked onto the back of AOL Messenger. That's probably where I used it more. But
Well, because I remember the away messages were a big thing. So, like, you know, your away status. Like later on in MSM, you could get what tunes you were listening to and put it in your
Yeah.
status. But AOL was the first one with away messages where you'd be like some emotional lyrics in there to make yourself seem really like deep, and then you'd
type in your favourite Spice Girls song lyrics.
yeah.
But so the story is that they've finally closed AIM down.
I couldn't believe it was still going. To be honest, like,
That's a bigger shock, I think.
And the amazing thing is that bulletin board systems and IRC has kind of outlasted all of these strange little messenger services and stuff.
Well, MSN Messenger got shut down. It wasn't that long ago, was it? About maybe 2 or 3 years ago. They kind of they incorporated it into Skype, didn't they? Moved everyone over to it.
Yeah, and I remember ICQ as well. That got bought up by I think it was Yahoo or
Yeah.
someone like that.
But I've got a feeling there is, because wasn't ICQ like an open protocol? And I think there is kind of like free versions of it now where you just, you can actually still use a service in like a different kind of
Maybe. I
guise.
remember the best thing about that was you could chat to random people and you could choose random people in the area and then just connect with them and start chatting madness.
On ICQ?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Remember the usernames were like something like 95017.
Yeah.
Like, I used to have that at the bottom of my email signature. But again, it's like you said, no one's really using these services anymore. But when you read about them being closed down, I mean, AOL Instant Messenger was created in 1997, and apparently it hasn't quite closed down yet. They're going to shut the service down on the 15th of December this year.
Well,
so.
in certain circles, we used to use ICQ. Well, no, certain circles used to use ICQ to notify them of when victims would come online for hacking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because as soon anybody would come on their PC, they'd have ICQ set to start up when Windows starts. So whenever they went online, victim 1 is online. And then,
what keyloggers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Oh,
Trojans
interesting,
and
interesting.
stuff, yeah.
You don't speak from experience there, obviously, Ravi. You just
No,
read
I
about
don't
that,
know
imagine,
anything
yeah.
about it. It's-
But, I mean, you've got to give it to AIM. It outlived MSN Messenger. So.
Oh, totally, yeah. And MSN was like crack after school.
I remember at college, we got like Windows 98 PCs, and I think, didn't MSN Messenger come with Windows 98, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And I remember that later feature with MSN where you could send audio.
All right, okay.
And I'd just be going around my mate's house and he'd have MSM left on and there'd be people screaming down the mics, hip-hop beats, like everything, just going off continually. And he'd be like, oh, it's just my MSM, ignore it.
But it got banned from our college, Joe, because everyone, they upgraded from 95 to 98, like probably in about 2000 or something.
Yeah.
But then everyone just be chatting on it all day. Then they got wise to it, so we all got banned from MSN in the end. They blocked the ports, I think. But it's kind of, because everyone uses Facebook Messenger and stuff these days. But that is, I suppose, just a development of like AIM and MSN Messenger, really, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. It's just kind of a bit lamer now, actually. It doesn't seem like such a cool inside club as it did before.
Yeah. And you remember all those nicknames you'd have with weird like brackets
the
and
squiggly lines.
squares and asterisks.
Yeah, ASCII art got involved there, definitely.
So if you want to jump on at AIM before it goes offline, you've only got about 6 weeks left to do it before it shuts down forever. So might give it a little download and give it a send off. I won't remember my login anymore though. So another retro console is on the market if you want a bit of physical hardware then, eh? Tell us about the Retro Bit.
Well, this is an actual company, Retrobit, and we've covered one of their systems before, but I went onto their website and, oh my God, we've missed a lot, Dan. They have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 systems here, and they've got these cool little top loaders. So it's like a NES Mini.
Yeah.
It's called a NES top loader, and it's only $24. And you can kind of put your original cart in and just play on that. They've got a Genesis X, which is a hybrid console that plays both of the kind of Sega systems, so Master System and Genesis. But then they've got a Retro Duo Portable as well, which looks really like the Switch.
That's nuts. Yeah, well, I'm looking at this Gen X thing here as well, and apparently not only does it play... it plays Mega Drive cartridges. It plays NES cartridges as well, apparently, which is quite random. It looks pretty cool. It does look a bit like, you can tell it's heavily inspired by the Mega Drive appearance.
Yeah, and this Retro Duo Portable, it looks like a Switch, but you can shove fat SNES cartridges in the back and then basically play on it.
That looks pretty good. And that's $89.
Yeah, so these prices are really, really actually reasonable for these things. If you could find them in the UK, you'll have a little bargain there.
And it plays NES and SNES games.
Yeah, so a lot of them...
And Mega Drive games.
Yeah,
as well.
a lot of them have dual purposes. So if you go out and check the... retrobit.com, we'll put a link in the bottom and it has all of their consoles online.
They look like a pretty cool company, and I imagine they're making these themselves. I did actually see that Retro Duo thing on GameSack. I do remember them talking about that, actually, and I think they're quite a lot of fun with that, actually. So,
but, this whole range, it's like, wow, it's absolutely fantastic, the Retro Duos. But then these little NES top loaders just must be so cheap.
Yeah,
Can't believe it, $24.99.
I always think it's cool that people build physical hardware. I mean, obviously you can do emulation and all that, but it's not as sexy, is it?
No, not at all. And these consoles look great.
And speaking of avoiding emulation, we had Joe talking about his SNES Mini, obviously recently, that he got hold of.
They've cracked it.
Of course they have.
Of course they've cracked it. So you can now play illegally downloaded games on your SNES Mini, and it's using a custom system of flashing it.
Okay.
And you basically kind of Hachi, which is the big program that everybody uses for kind of hacking these Nintendo products or getting firmware into them. It was used on the Wii U. It was used on the Switch before, and they're using it now at the moment. So you can kind of use this service Hachi and load games into there off it. Like they've got an example, SimCity, that they're loading onto it.
We can essentially put any ROM on, I guess, then, because it's you know, got an emulator on there, so you can just download any ROMs, I guess, you want onto it, I guess. So
yeah, totally. And it basically connects to a shared FTP. So it has kind of the games on there. So I don't know if you can add original stuff on there. Or...
All right, so it streams the games.
It's kind of like that. It's like you have to connect to the FTP, then load it into Hachi, and then it gets loaded into your system.
Okay, interesting.
It's like a little bridge, you see, because Nintendo block off these things, so they need to find a little way of getting in. For example, on my Wii U, if I go onto the browser and then go onto a certain site, I can access the exploit through that, and then it knocks me into the kind of menu with all the Wii U exploit store on it and all of this stuff. So
is it essentially like, you know, if you jailbreak an iPhone, you get Cydia? Is it kind of like a secondary store?
It's like jailbreaking it, yeah,
okay.
Totally.
See, I remember when you told me you hacked your Wii U, you did that in like, what, took you 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
Yeah. It's crazy. It's just finding a way of getting into there because you can't load it off the SD card or you can't do this. So this is the alternate method.
Some people are saying here, you know, if you don't mind pirating, I'm not sure why you would have bought one in the first place. But again, you're paying on like, it's the hardware and the controller, and it's a nice system.
Well, also the apps as well. So, for example, on the Wii U, there's a Paint app that's not available on the normal one.
Yeah,
that you can use. It's really nice. So, you know, there's stuff at the moment you can't really play videos on the Switch. You can't browse YouTube. There may be unsupported YouTube apps coming out, video browsers, stuff to make it a bit more useful.
I did read a way, actually, that they may have patched this, I've not tried it on mine, a way that you can access a web browser on the Switch. That was by going to, like, you know, looking at the T's and C's at the beginning, and there's a bit there where it's like, you know, click here to find out more, then it actually opens a web browser, then you can view source or something and type it in another address, and there is a way to get into a web browser.
So. There's always a way with Nintendo, you know, because the system's based on something, and they've obviously kind of worked out how to get onto that top layer. They just need to find a little gap.
You know, the fact that it was hacked so quickly, it kind of proves, you know, that people want a less restrictive library on there. But what still blows my mind is, you know, they brought out this SNES Mini and they still didn't put a Wi-Fi chip and, like, access a virtual console on it. They're missing such a trick.
Yeah, it's really weird, that is. And I guess because maybe they haven't released it yet because they're scared of hackers. So they're trying to fix every hole, put it out later. You know, like, I think surely they've got to have a YouTube app on there and they've got to have a video player.
Well, has a SNES Mini even got, like, can it go online?
I don't know.
I don't think it can. No, so that's what I mean. Why have they not put a Wi-Fi chip in there? Yeah. Surely it costs pennies. And they're going to make that up. I mean, if you've got space on the system, obviously there is room left on it because people are hacking it and putting all these extra games on there.
I don't know. We have to get Joe here because all we need to buy is SNES Mini.
Well, I saw one in CEX today for 145 quid. So,
oh, dear.
Yeah. I may hold off for a little while, I think. But
I saw someone selling one for a human soul on Craigslist today.
Bargain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've got the original SNES, so I know Joe has as well. I don't really see any reason that I want a SNES Mini. But I think it's cool, you know, for people that do just want to play the old games and they don't want to mess around with the original hardware and everything. But it still blows my mind that Nintendo are missing such a big trick. Because you get that system, you play the games that are on it, then surely it's going to whet your appetite for other games that you remember that are not on there.
Totally.
So, crazy. Right then, well, thank you for checking out episode number 93 of the Retro Hour podcast. I mean, I thought that conversation there was quite interesting about modding stuff. I would be quite interested to know if people have, like, you know, hacked or modded anything and, like, you know, what their kind of favourite mods or hacks are.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? Because a lot of people are like, oh, you shouldn't hack it. And it's like, you know, you've bought this hardware. Yeah, you don't have to stick in Nintendo's world. Well, that's what I believe.
Well, you own it, don't you? It's yours at the end of the day. So, if you've got any interesting mods or hacks, let us know about them. Maybe find some videos on YouTube. You can always email us, show@theretrohour.com. And if you do listen on iTunes or Stitcher, any of those services, of course, we really appreciate all of your 5-star ratings, all of your reviews as well. It's actually been a little bit quiet on the review front recently, so...
We had a nice one on iTunes the other day, but we could do with some more.
Absolutely, so please do keep those coming in. Helps us rise up the iTunes charts. Maybe the other week we're like, what, number 4, 5?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thanks, guys.
So, obviously that, puts us in front of loads of new listeners. So please do keep those coming in, guys. And, of course, you can tweet us at Retro Hour UK. Same on Instagram. We've got a Facebook page as well. All of those you'll find on our website, theretrohour.com. All right, then. Are you ready for this week's special guest? Let's talk about Ocean Software.
All those muscly guys and beautiful ladies.
Ravi's getting excited. Batman as well, what a game. Bob Wakelin, the guy who pretty much was responsible for all of those amazing Ocean Software box arts and all the posters you used to see in magazines and stuff. What an absolute superstar. Here he is, this week's special guest, the amazing Bob Wakelin on the Retro Hour podcast. And we'll see you next week.
Ciao.
You're listening to the Retro Hour podcast, and it's time to welcome this week's very special guest to the show, Bob Wakelin. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're very welcome.
Now, Bob, we're going to get obviously those, I'm sure, very interesting stories about your time at Ocean in just a bit, but this is a question we always like to ask everybody, just to kind of set the scene a little bit. What was your first ever computer experience then? Do you remember when you first experienced one?
Yeah, well, see, I wasn't really much of a gamer at all. Most of my gaming was done in the pub. So I was playing things like Galaxian, I think. That was probably my first experience. No, that old table tennis game.
Oh, Pong.
That's the one. That's the one I first played. A friend had it, and I'd go round and we'd play it. But I'd sort of lose interest within 3 hours.
Well, I know with Pong, a lot of people said it was kind of a bit of a miracle because you were actually manipulating something that happened on the screen, and that was kind of a new thing, I guess.
It was an odd thing, and how it could, considering how simple it was, it would really grab you, and you couldn't drag yourself away at all. But I think most of the gaming I really enjoyed was things like Space Invaders, Galaxian, and those earlier coin-op games. But really, I never bothered after that, because I obviously, with me being older than the kids that got into it, then I really kind of missed the boat on playing the games themselves. Basically, I had other things to do at my age than sit around playing computer games.
More interesting things, probably.
Loads more interesting, I'd say.
Well, did you actually get a computer at home then, or did you not bother at first?
No, never had one. I'd go around to other people's places if I wanted to. On the odd occasion I did play a game, I'd play it at somebody else's house. There was no room for it in my life, really, because I was either drawing or drinking or other indulgences, whatever I could find to do at the time.
Well, what kind of things did you kind of start sketching when you were a kid? I read in an interview that you started drawing explosions and like big car crashes and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny that, because the first things I really remember doing was drawing like the cones of volcanoes and puffs of smoke coming out, and little stick men flying through the air with little legs coming off and heads and things. And yeah, it wasn't so much car crashes, because I couldn't draw a car, even a simple one. But yeah, disasters, really simple disasters. Airplanes was a good one. 2 airplanes crashing and loads of people falling out. That was a favourite.
I used to sketch nuclear bombs, the mushroom clouds. That was quite good.
Yeah.
All that aggression gets out.
Yeah, teenage aggression.
I might have done that at one point, nuclear bombs. I think I picked up on the people falling out of airplanes, because I live near an Air Force base, and they used to have practice runs of parachuting over our house. And like loads of airmen had just like parachute out when I was a kid, and like land literally 100, 200 yards away from the house.
Oh, wow.
So that was a big influence on me for the rest of my life.
Well, the British kind of comic book scene was really kicking off in the 80s and 70s. Did you have any particular favourites?
I liked 2000 AD. And when I was young, because I kind of grew up in the 60s, so I liked The Eagle and stuff like that. And then I loved 2000 AD. But I was mainly interested in American comic books. They just blew me away, because I'd grown up just reading, tanks, stories of huge, muscular men sort of punching tanks and things in the British comics.
Yeah, because you had Dan Dare and characters like that in the British ones, and there was a lot more American.
Which I kind of enjoyed, but I got into the American stuff in the 60s, basically. And mainly because of that Air Force base that was near me, there was a lot of Americans there, American Air Force guys, who used to bring their used comics around and give them to everybody. So that really hooked me.
What was the first time you ever made money from art?
God.
You actually got commissioned, or even if it was just do a sketch for a mate,
Oh my God. I don't think I ever made any money until I got a job for, not for that long really, maybe for 5 years, 6 years. And it was at a studio in Liverpool, and that was the first time I got paid to draw, basically. So I worked for them for, as I say, maybe 5 years, and then I went freelance after that. And at that point, I was doing rock posters for the student university. So I was, something completely unrelated to what I ended up doing.
But then you look at, albums on the rock scene. Usually they had quite epic pieces on the LP covers and stuff, didn't they? I mean, did that kind of carry over a bit into the game stuff later on, that style?
I guess subconsciously it would have had an effect on me. Obviously there was the guy who did the Yes sleeves, and, which at the time I absolutely loved, and now I can't bear to look at. There would have been an influence on me there, but only for a very short period, because really the rock was something that wore off on me, or that kind of prog rock very quickly. I kind of grew out of it.
Well, for a guy that wasn't all that into video games, it's quite interesting that you ended up designing the box art for Ocean then. So how did you get to work with Ocean Software?
That was purely through, it was kind of accidental, really. There was a guy I knew. He was a bit older than me, and he was a decent artist, an airbrush artist in his own right, and he knew David Ward. So he was working on doing these quite small sketches about A5, and he asked me, I just bumped into him, he said, I'm going to meet this guy, do you want to come along? I'm going to the pub. So we went to the pub, and so I met him, talked to him for a bit, and then I did a job for him, and he immediately said, do you want to work for us? So I said, yeah, okay. At the time, it was mainly advertising work I was doing, which was boring me to tears, So that came along with very good timing for me.
Were you aware of how kind of big Ocean was at the time?
Not a clue. I met Dave Ward in his house when I delivered the artwork to him at his apartment in Liverpool. So I still didn't really know much about this at all, except that he paid me immediately, so and that was all I cared about, really. It was like, one, I hope you like it, two, give me the money. So I didn't really know anything about the games at all, the industry, not a damn thing. I was shown a lot of stuff, and I just thought most of it looked pretty bad. So I thought, basically, look, I could do better than that. So that's what I did, really. Some of the early ones I don't think were much better, because I wasn't really trying. I just thought I could do this really easily, you know.
Well, what were the first projects that you worked on at Ocean?
The one that I think the first one I did. Now I can't guarantee this, but I think the first one I did was Road Frog. There was another one, Caterpillar. I think there was that one, which was dreadful, awful bit of artwork. I've got a feeling that I probably did maybe 5 or 6, all in a couple of weeks. Moon Alert, that was another one. But I was supposed to split this with the other guy, who's called Blair Wilkins. But Blair would never turn up when, you know, I'd say, well, can you get round at 9 o'clock? Because we were sharing a space, and we'll get stuck into this. And he'd turn up at like 3 in the afternoon, and, you know, and he was like always stoned. So we could never, ever sort of meet deadlines if it was always going to be me and him. And eventually, I just took over the whole thing because the deadline thing was too much for him. So I basically took all his work and left him to die in the gutter.
I bet it was a bit of a relief doing your first kind of solo pieces where you could actually get it out on time.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked the guy, but trying to get anything done for a deadline was incredibly difficult, you know. And when it comes down to it, that business is all about deadlines, you know. Being an illustrator is always about deadline.
Well, obviously you're working freelance then. And I mean, did Ocean make you feel like really welcome when you turned up? I know, like, I heard stories that you and Steve Blower used to go out and sink a few quite regularly.
We did, yeah. It was pretty good right from the start. It was fun. And I've got to say, you know, that most of the people there were pretty cool. You know, there was 1 or 2 that I probably didn't get on with that much. But generally speaking, yeah, they were great. I got on really well with David Ward, and Steve Blower was a top guy, totally.
So was it quite a social job? I guess you kind of didn't have to sit at a desk in a suit and kind of produce your work. How did you get it done?
I worked at home. I was freelancing, so I'd get a phone call, and I'd say maybe I would either get some stills sent to me in the post, like screenshots, or I would go over to Ocean and see a demo of the game and get some kind of character sketches and work from there. And so obviously I could work dressed or not dressed in whatever I wanted to, working at home.
Can't be working in your pyjamas.
No, I mean, there were days when I got up, I just like made some coffee, and then suddenly it was like 9 o'clock in the evening, you know, and I was still sitting there in my boxers.
Well, that's the thing, I guess you can't force creativity. It either comes or it doesn't it?
Yeah. It's got nothing to do with anything other than what comes out of your head, and either your pencil, your brush, or, you know, in my case at the time, the airbrush as well, you know. I mean, the way you look and the way you present yourself has absolutely nothing to do with creativity.
Well, a bit further down the road, obviously, we had Imagine Software in Liverpool, and you got to work with those guys as well. How did you get involved with them?
Well, to be honest, I didn't work for Imagine until Ocean bought them.
Yeah.
So I was only working them when David Ward asked me to do stuff for Imagine, which was no longer Imagine. So I didn't really know those guys at all. To be honest, all I knew about them was the program on TV where the bailiffs were sent in, and one of the guys was a big friend of mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the first guy on the first one to enter the building was this guy who lived like literally 30 yards from me, who drove the truck. It was his truck that took everything away. So I was like, oh my God.
I remember that scene in that documentary, like the staff go on their lunch break and they come back and they can't get in, and the bailiffs are just there, aren't they? Yeah.
And I had a really odd relationship with him because after that, because I thought, well, I don't like bailiffs, you know. But I knew this guy, you know, so I had to talk to him and said, like, I'm not fond of this, mate. You going in taking people's stuff. And he just said, Bob, I just drive the van. They hire it from me. I drive it, and they do the business, That was my excuse for remaining friends with him anyway.
Well, obviously around that time, I mean, Imagine were infamous almost for the mega games that they were working on, like Bandersnatch and Cyclops and that. I mean, did you ever see any of those games, or was there anything left around that time when Ocean got them?
To be honest, all I saw of those games was adverts, really. And maybe if I walked past, one of the small computer game shops back in those days, so I was aware of the names, but I'd never seen the games. In fact, I was aware of a lot of the names because, especially, I looked a bit more into the history of it, and at that point, the history was only a couple of years, just to kind of get myself a bit more embedded in that scene before I carried on, because I didn't want to completely go off on the wrong track.
Was there a point where you kind of went into a shop and sort of a shelf with all your designs on it and kind of thought, wow, this is much bigger than I thought?
Yeah, there was. And I, as you say, I didn't really realise, and going in probably would have been, I don't know, maybe 85. And I've been working for Ocean for 2.5 years, maybe then, and saw that, half of the boxes there were mine, were Ocean's with my covers, and that was a bit odd, really, and quite amusing.
Well, did you ever see any kids' reactions to them at the time, or it was the incentive to grab it off the shelf, that kind of image?
It was really amusing once. I can't remember what shop I was in, and there were a couple of kids just standing there, sort of going, "Look at the cover, man." And another one saying, "Oh, I've heard the game's crap, but look at the cover, look at the cover." And then I'm going, "Oh, that's a great cover.
You should buy that one."
That's really good, that. And then they, go off and buy it. Not that I was getting royalties. So I was kind of, even then, I was helping Ocean out.
But it's an interesting point, that, because I remember going out and buying, Commodore games from, Boots or whatever, or W.H. Smith, and you would, because, the graphics were quite primitive then, and you turn around, the screenshots, weren't always amazing, but the front of the box, I guess, even more back in the day, had to draw you in and, kind of make the sale ring, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was trying to do, because I just thought so many of the boxes were amateurish. There were a handful that stood out as being of better quality, but my approach was always to try and have a kind of central figure to it that sucked you in, so that instead of trying to depict kind of religiously what was going on in the game, or all I wanted to do was catch a kid's eye, which I think I was good at doing, because in my head, I was and still am a kid. And I respond to that now, If I go in a comic shop, and I'm not that interested in comics anymore, but I can walk past the cover and go, right, I'll have that. And I'll pick something up just because of the cover, tear the cover off it and put it in a file.
We were talking about Imagine a moment ago, and that documentary, that was kind of the, that kind of gave the impression that the British video games industry in the mid-'80s was very extravagant. There's all these 20-year-old kids driving Ferraris and all that. I mean, did you see much of that?
No. Not at all. It was all programmers. That initial thing, it was insane, wasn't it? And the projections of what people were going to earn, everything had gone ballistic, and of course it was all unrealistic at that point. I mean, it changed, and then the usual thing happened, and the big money guys moved into the industry and took everything for themselves, and then paid wages to these creators instead of them being able to make their own money. Like Imagine could have done if they'd have been bloody smarter.
It was kind of like that early days of the .com era where everybody just went mad.
Yeah. I think it's like that with every fledgling industry, that seems to be building a following and doing pretty well. And, people just assume they can keep that forever. And I find it really sad that suddenly reality hits them, and it's all taken away, and people are left dreaming of the old days when we could do this and when we could do that. I get that being an illustrator, I don't dwell on things, but the way things were compared to the way they are now, it was like some kind of weird heaven,
Well, being a freelancer as well, you were able to kind of take random hours and do it at your own pace. Did this help when you were getting a workload of lots? Yeah.
And it meant I could work for other people as well. I didn't do anything for any other games companies because I just figured that wouldn't be fair to Ocean at that point, being as they were paying me really good money to do these sleeves. These boxes, and at one point they actually put me on a retainer to make sure I wouldn't work for anyone else, which I knocked on the head after a year because I felt it was too constricting, I was doing other work, but it just wasn't in that industry.
Well, I also read around on the internet, there's some people saying you're responsible for the Ocean logo, there's some people saying you're not.
No, that I've tried to put this straight a few times in a few interviews, and they already had that font printed a kind of dark blue as a letterhead. So they already had that blue font exactly as it is today, even with the new Ocean softwares like webpage and things. What I did was zap it up. I did the airbrushing over the top of it and gave it that slightly 3D look. But I didn't create the logo. I just tarted it up, basically.
It's an iconic logo, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And from what I was told, they needed quickly, when they decided to change from Spectrum Games to Ocean, they needed something really quickly, and they went to a local printer, said, can you bang us out a logo really quick? And they said, do you like this typeface? And it was, yeah, cool, do that. And then within a couple of years, then I altered it for them.
Well, obviously, in the early days of the games industry, copyright wasn't really much of an issue. And I know you did the cover for Contra, and then was it reused in Greiser? Did you have anything to do with that? Or was it just kind of reused without your permission? Or
no, well, that was a weird one, that, because Greiser initially, the Greiser I was shown was completely different. It had, the background on the Greiser that I did. The advert was basically just that background with these kind of alien heads. So they showed me that, and I said, it needs a couple of, soldiers in there to really make it work. And I used Arnie as a model. I just found loads of pictures of Arnie and decided which ones to basically copy. And then I pasted in the background of the original Greiser that I'd seen behind those characters. So that was how it originally started. But since then, people have taken that image and used it in lots of different ways, And if I could be bothered, I'd try and sue them. But, I took those pictures of Arnie out of some kind of film magazine and just altered them, made his muscles bigger, all the usual stuff, made his gun more of a science fiction-y gun, really, and changed his haircut. I can't remember now, but what that brings me on to something, actually, and what I was trying to do in the 80s, everybody was into those action movies, so I was trying to, apart from the fact that it was good reference, I was trying to form a link between the games art and the movies, which were complete, the movies that were really popular at the time, but not make them absolutely recognisable, because that would have caused trouble, obviously. So change some of the features and etc., move them about a bit. I was actually using a lot of that 80s popular culture in those games.
That's quite, you can actually see that because, you look at those covers like, Grisor and, Operation Wolf and Green Beret 2. And then kind of your style, I guess, when you got to like Parasol Stars, it was a lot softer, wasn't it, by then? A lot less masculine.
Well, yeah, I couldn't really have the characters carrying like Kalashnikovs or whatever. It might not have gone down too well, sort of bleeding and...
That would have been a very different game, wouldn't it?
It would have been great. I'd have really enjoyed that. I hated working on those things, most of them. I think it was Parasol Stars or... What was it? Oh, God, what was the other one that... Rainbow Islands 2, was it?
Yeah, there's Bubble Bobble, Rainbow Islands... and then Parasol Stars was the third one.
Oh, Parasol Stars.
Yeah.
That killed me. I detested that damn game. And, trying to do something with it, it absolutely drove me bonkers. But thinking back on it now, I think I really enjoyed doing New Zealand Story. That was a fun one, But I was also worried about mates coming around because I worked at home and laughing at me for doing these stupid cartoons,
They're very cutesy, weren't they? Little chicken, wasn't it, New Zealand Story? Yeah.
It would have been just like, wow, what are you doing, Bob?
I've been drawing Action Man as well, it's all right.
I know. It was a time I was living in,
Did you have much kind of control over the final designs, such as like text placement? Did you do anything good and have it covered up? Or?
Well, occasionally. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to diss Steve Blower, but he did do some dodgy stuff on my artwork occasionally, and I love the guy. He's great, but he did some stuff that I really wasn't happy with. But to be fair, he was given an almost impossible task, you've got to sell this game with these little flashes and blurbs all over it. The logos were always done by me, so you couldn't, and I integrated them into the artwork, so you couldn't mess around with those.
Did you ever lose any pieces, like, a misplaced cup of tea or something could have caused a disaster?
Yeah, I lost a few. I can't remember. I made a mess on a couple of them, with exactly by sort of laughing and spluttering tea over them, or the killer one was always when I was airbrushing. If I hadn't cleaned it properly, and I get a big spatter of ink, and that is where I developed my spatter style. Because it was like, well, how do I cover this up? I know, I'll increase the spatter and it's going to look great.
Often the best tricks you discover by accident, I guess.
Yeah, I used to discover loads of techniques by accident, by one, being too lazy to go to the art shop, and two, trying to use every last piece of paper that was hanging around. I wasn't very professional, I'll be honest with you.
Did you ever have any interest from, like, America or Japan or any of these people about doing artwork?
No, nothing at all. Not in the games way. I had interest for doing other things, but certainly not in the games world. I think, though, then as well, it was harder to find somebody. Now, people could find me really easily if they wanted to. But then, if anybody wanted to get in touch with me, they'd have to go through Ocean probably, and they're really going to give out my phone number to everybody, aren't they? Or weren't they? No, they weren't. So it was a lot more difficult, really, and I never particularly went looking for work, because I was doing stuff for Marvel UK at the time, like covers for mags and stuff, and posters.
You did like Spider-Man and that, didn't you?
Yeah. So I was doing quite a lot of those at the same time, and between that and the Ocean work, I was all right financially. I didn't really have any dependents particularly. My wife worked, no kids, lived in a flat in Toxteth, so I could do basically anything I wanted to do. So I never went looking for work. I just thought, great, I've got no work on. to the pub.
Because, I mean, your workload was pretty insane. I mean, I heard you working on, like, sometimes 5 games at the same time.
Yeah. In the early days, it was crazy. I'd be given a list, right, usually by David Ward, and he'd say, right, Bob, we've got this game, you've got that game, and then there's 3 others, and then he'd phone, what's his name, Dave Woods, and just check with him. What were we supposed to be doing? And then he'd say, oh, we've got this and this, and then I'd end up with a list of 5 or 6, and then with no apparent deadlines or no deadlines ready, and then I just kind of start them all, really, and then see which one I got pressured to finish first, I mean, don't get me wrong, I did work hard, but I did spend an awful lot of time looking at a blank piece of paper, not knowing what the hell to do. A golf game, Jesus Christ. What, is there anything going on in it? No, it's just golf. Yeah, but, is there any aliens or a dragon? Please, give me something. No, it's golf. And games like that. Oh, we've got a flying game. Great. So what happens? Oh, you just fly.
Stick a plane on.
Yeah, you just fly in a plane. Oh, jeez, please. So they were difficult.
Well, did you ever find it, obviously, when you're coming up with stuff from scratch, I imagine that was very different to when you did things like the Batman cover, because they were already established kind of styles and characters. I mean, how did your approach to them differ?
To those, they were approved by DC. So, essentially, I did, well, to be honest, both times, but for both of the ones I illustrated, I did a complete piece of artwork, and they sent it over to DC for approval. And I think I got changes on both of them, but only tiny ones. And I think it was all to do with the length of Batman's ears, because I saw the original artwork again recently, which I sold a long time ago, and there was an overlay with a fresh set of Batman ears on it. It was like with everything else with Ocean. The vast majority of the time, I went straight to full artwork, not even a sketch, and they trusted me to do something.
So the kind of final thing that you'd do would be go in and chuck the artwork on the desk and be like, finished.
Yeah, just go to see Steve Blower, give him the artwork, and Steve would say, yeah, do you fancy a drink? That's great.
Yeah, that'll do, Bob. Let's get
it. Are you hungry? Yeah. Do you fancy a tie? Yeah.
Good approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we come back and look at the artwork again. But there were 1 or 2 where I had to make very slight changes. One was on the Renegade artwork. I had a knife in the girl's hand, and I had to change it to something else. I know one had a mace in it, and the other one had a knife. And for the German market, they thought that was too violent. It was kind of hilarious, really. But and there were a couple of other things, like, just really silly things, like take the cleft out of someone's chin.
Well, I remember as a kid, one cover that stuck in my mind as a young lad was where Time Stood Still, the lady on the front with a rather see-through T-shirt.
Yeah, that was a photo of Penthouse.
Oh, wow.
I just thought, and you know what, I used to have a file, it wasn't all Penthouse, but I used to have a file of, like, great photographs that I really liked, that had a bit of dynamism in them, and I thought could be like, sort of, whether it was a woman looking quite sexy, but not in a sort of trashy way, but looking, sort of erotic. It all sounds like crap now, because you were talking about the 1980s, And,
well, it worked for me, Bob. It worked for me.
It's making me laugh. And so it was like Muscle Men and Lisa Lyon, the bodybuilder. I mean, I used a few pics of her when I wanted a woman to have more muscle. And I used her as a model, even, say it was a woman a photo at a penthouse like it was in that one, I would use pictures of Lisa Lyon to add the musculature to her body, because I didn't want her looking like pipe cleaners, you know. I'd forgotten about that one.
Out of all the pieces you've done, what's your favourite?
To be honest, it does. I do like quite a few of them, but I think in every piece I've done, there's something I really hate. You know, there's something I absolutely can't stand about them. I think one of my favourite pieces is Operation Wolf, because I just love the way I managed to get that character coming straight out of the page. And also the guy was one of my mates who posed for it, which kind of adds something to it, you know. So yeah, I'd say Operation Wolf. The other one I really like actually is Highlander, but the game was crap. You know, that I think Highlander was probably technically one of the best illustrations that I did.
I always remember Epic as well. I like that one.
Epic.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I really enjoyed that. I've forgotten who wrote the game. The guys that wrote the game, and I don't think they liked it when they saw it.
Oh wow!
Because I went round to see them, and they showed me a lot of stills and stuff, you know, of characters in it, and then I came up with my idea, and I don't think that was the idea that they really wanted. But unfortunately, like David Ward and Steve Blower and other people thought it was great, so they didn't really get much of a say in it.
I mean,
sorry, whoever those fellows were, I apologise. Honestly.
Well, I think, you know, you look at some of the other covers as well. Like I remember, you know, Mikey, that game, that was quite original. I mean, that must have been quite a change in style from the other stuff you've done at the time.
See, I used to like doing stuff like that. Doing those like madcap cartoon style ones, which I did a handful. I really enjoyed doing that kind of stuff. The background actually was drawn by somebody else, not me. I designed the main character, but then the actual drawing of the characters in the background was done by a friend who's now lived in New York for 25 years or something like that. And then I painted them. I don't even know if I gave him any credit. Probably not, because he might have left the country by then. I wouldn't bother, would I? Let's face it.
Well, obviously, you know, as we kind of got into like the mid-90s and stuff, when 3D started coming around, I mean, kind of game covers moved away from like painted pictures, didn't they, quite a lot? I mean, did that affect you a lot?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I had more pressure on me to get more detailed, I think. You know, so the last couple of things I did, one, they didn't particularly sell that well because the games world was changing so much, but I was asked to really pull out the stops, and the games kind of pretty much disappeared down the plug hole anyway. Central Intelligence, you know, the amount of time I put into that was crazy. And then I had an argument with Ocean about the bill, but I said, you can't ask me to do 4 times the amount of work and then expect me to charge the same amount of money. That's crazy, you know. It just went away, basically. That was it. It was all rendered stuff. And for a while, everything looked absolutely the same, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it was so sad going into somewhere like HMV and just looking at it and thinking, God, is this it now? Is this kind of greyness right across the shelves? Horrible. But I just moved into other stuff. Sort of took a few months to think about what I wanted to do. I went back to Marvel for a bit, and that was too much like hard work, really. It was a young man's game, you know, and I just thought, right, kids' books for me.
Well, we kind of go around retro shows and always bump into you, Bob, especially at Play Expo. You're always there.
Yeah.
What are you kind of up to nowadays?
I'm pretty much retired, to be honest. I'm still doing things that, you know, requests pieces of artwork, as long as people are paying me, obviously. But as far as commercial work go, because of ill health, I've had no choice but to stop taking on commercial work with deadlines, because it's impossible for me to guarantee I can meet a deadline. Because I spend a big proportion of my week in hospital, and when I'm not in hospital, then, maybe a quarter of the rest of the time, just really tired. So really, I just carried on for as long as I could, and then just got in touch with a few people and said, sorry, that's it, I can't do it anymore.
Well, Bob, I mean, it is always wonderful when we see you at shows, and it must be great bumping into the fans and these guys who bought these games when they were kids and still have fond memories 20, 30 years down the line.
Oh, yeah, it is strange that, initially I was a bit worried about it, because I didn't have that much interest in games, and I was expecting it just to be a bunch of intolerable geeks. And it turned out to be, there are a lot of intolerable geeks, but...
You got two here.
Yeah, but a lot of them are very tolerable and very nice people, so that's cool. And I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed getting back into it and meeting people who essentially tell me the same story, but what am I supposed to say, Bob, I loved your stuff when I was a kid. Good. That was my plan.
Well, it proves you did it well, though.
Cheers.
Yeah. Well, Bob, hopefully we'll bump into you at another show soon. It's always lovely to see you, and thank you for reminiscing with us. It's been fascinating getting all these stories.
You're welcome.
Yeah, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, take care of yourself.